Coming from Calgary, I come from the land of Treaty 7 and Métis Region 3, so thank you very much for being here with us today. My first question, Madame Wilson, is why isn't the Minister of Indigenous Affairs here today? The committee unanimously agreed and to invite her to come. Why isn't she here today?
I didn't have an opportunity to have that discussion with her, so I'm not quite aware. You'd have to ask her. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. The AFN told this committee that they believe most of the contracts for the government's Indigenous procurement program have gone to shell companies. Do you believe that they are correct?
So I heard the testimony that was provided by the AFN Regional Chief Joanna Bernard, I believe, and I have a great deal of respect for her. We've actually reached out to AFN to try to corroborate some of the evidence and testimony they provided. We haven't quite received a response to the notion of shell companies and their numbers there, nor the 1%. So we'll continue to work with them, and hopefully they'll have more information for us.
Okay, so from your response, I'm sensing that you feel that perhaps their response, the information they provided this committee, requires further information from your department. Would that be the best summary of your response, would you say?
I would say that we do not have any evidence, at least from our perspective, as to the numbers that were provided. No evidence of the data points that were provided.
Okay, thank you very much. Do you conduct audits regarding compliance with Indigenous procurement rules?
We do indeed provide audits, and I might ask Jessica to speak to our pre-audit, post-audit, and random audit process.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. The procurement strategy for Indigenous business requires 3 specific types of audits. A pre-award audit, which is mandatory for contracts that are over $2 million and voluntary otherwise. Discretionary audit, which can be requested by either Indigenous Services Canada or the client or the contracting authority, and post-award audits, which are done at the request of the client or Indigenous Services Canada.
So then how many audits has the department conducted to this date, please?
So this year, I can confirm, well, since December 2023, we have completed 19 pre-award audits, and we have 12 post-award audits currently underway.
And could you please share with the committee on which companies did you conduct the audits, please?
The pre-award audits.
But which companies specifically would be listed under the pre-award audits?
If you can just give me a moment.
Certainly.
Please. Unfortunately, I don't have that list of which companies were done, but we could provide that as if desired.
If you could please provide that to the committee, that would be much appreciated. I wanted to go now specifically to the ArriveCan issue and the abuse of joint ventures. Its relationship to Indigenous contracting. As I'm sure you're aware, Dalian is a 2-person company that qualified as Indigenous. It formed a partnership with Coradix, and that partnership was able to obtain contracts under the Indigenous procurement set-aside, even though Coradix has a substantial number of employees. And Dalian effectively has just the 2 partners. Dalian struggled to answer simple questions about the work they actually completed, and it would seem that Dalian is there to allow the non-Indigenous company, Coradix, to obtain opportunities meant specifically for Indigenous businesses, which, as I understand, is the objective of the program. In your opinion, do you see what happened in the case of ArriveCan as being an abuse of the program?
I don't have a personal opinion on that actual question. I'm following it like everyone else in terms of the audit, the Auditor General, and so on.
Okay, so the department would this potentially be one of the current audits of the department?
Yeah. Okay, got it. So we no longer have Dalian and joint venture companies with Dalian on the Indigenous Business Directory, nor do we have any contracts with Dalian or Corridix. They were suspended on March 12th from the Indigenous Business Directory due to questionable factors being raised in the media, here in committee sessions, and in fact, PSPC announced their suspension more broadly around the same time. That's.
Would you be able to indicate as to if Mr. David Yao was involved in the designing of the program itself?
We are not able to confirm whether that fact. I do understand that there was information provided by Mr. Yao. I can confirm, however, that when the PSAB, as it was known at the time, was put in place, there was extensive consultation with many stakeholders, and it's possible that Mr. Yao, as a business owner, could have been one of them.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, Miigwech.
Thank you to our witnesses for being here today. I'm Layla Goodridge. I'm the Member of Parliament for Fort McMurray Cold Lake, so the home of Alberta's oil sands. It's worth noting that in 2019, oil sands did $2.4 billion in Indigenous procurement. So it is possible. So I'm going to go back. You mentioned that Dalian had been removed from the Indigenous Business Directory. Can you explain specifically why they were removed?
Again, it was due to some of the stories that came up in the media. It was a matter of questioning some of the reports that we were hearing from testimony. Interestingly enough, and I should add this, it was not because they were not eligible under the directory. In fact, they had demonstrated that they were eligible as an Indigenous business. So it was for other factors, questions that came up, particularly in testimony.
So just to clarify, the government still considers that they are an Indigenous business?
No, go ahead. We're not.
So when we register, so I will answer the question.
Like just a simple yes or no would be like.
The business provided proof of indigeneity.
Okay, thanks. So my next question is, so you talked about how you don't monitor the subcontractors, so you don't really know, departments don't really know. Do you guys, or have you considered having a process in place to have an automatic audit if subcontracts are being utilized in any of these businesses?
I'd ask Jessica to chime in here, but there has not, at this point in time, been any consideration to increase tracking, monitoring, reporting, auditing. It can be considered.
Coming from the oil sands, where large contracts happen on a regular basis, large contracts happen with Indigenous businesses, not because any government mandates them to do it, because it's just good business. Some of the best businesses in the oil sands field are Indigenous businesses. They don't get the contracts because they're Indigenous. They get the businesses because they are the best. It really aggravates me because there are processes and best practices in contracting that are readily available, and the fact that the government of Canada hasn't considered that potentially this is a loophole allowing non-Indigenous people to benefit from what is supposed to be an Indigenous procurement strategy really bothers me. So have you looked at best practices in contracting to ensure that subcontracts are being utilized properly?
Yes.
Okay, and so can you confidently say that it is Indigenous subcontracts that are getting those jobs?
I can confidently say that for the absolute clear, far outstanding majority, that is the case. There has been some discrepancies that have arrived because of some of the audits and the questions that have come up, but it would be for quite a minuscule number.
Okay, so how many businesses other than Dalian have been removed from the Indigenous Business Directory, either because they didn't qualify for some reason like Dalian, or you discovered that they weren't Indigenous?
Good question, Jess.
I can speak to, I don't have the answer for the entirety of time since the beginning of PSIB in 1995. I can tell you that let's say if we take the past year, there have definitely been more than just Dalian that have been removed for various reasons.
Okay, so could you possibly get us a list of all of the businesses that have been removed? Let's take a date since 2015 and provide that in writing to the committee by Friday of all the businesses that have been removed because they were either determined to not be Indigenous or that were removed because of other reasons. And to specify those reasons, could we have that by Friday, end of business day?
So we are able to provide that information, but doing it by the end of tomorrow is I would like to respectfully request more time.
Okay, what, like the 31st?
What's the usual timeline?
We have a short period of time that we're looking at this, so if we have 21 days, this might be outdated by the time we get to this. We should have this information so that we can continue. This is critical. I think it's actually shocking that we only found out today that Dalian was removed. I think Canadians would like to know some of this information.
Actually, that was in the Globe and Mail, but 31st is fine.
Okay. So
That's pretty much our time.
okay, thank you.
Very much, Mr. Chair. Earlier, Ms. Sultan, you testified that it is a minuscule number of contracts where businesses don't comply with the subcontracting requirements and that these are outliers. However, you have repeatedly stated that you don't track subcontractors, and we have seen this borne out throughout government departments as the documents they have submitted to this committee lack documentation on subcontractors. You even stated that the department was made aware of questionable factors in Dalian's case by media reports and testimony at this committee. This implies that your department took no initiative in the case of Dalian to ensure they were meeting their requirements. So my question is, how are you able to testify today that the vast majority of contracts comply with the subcontracting requirement when your department does not monitor subcontracts and other departments have made it clear that they do not monitor subcontracts either?
I would say that monitoring does occur, tracking does occur. It is not done by our little unit at ISK. It is done by departments that are all across the country, all across town that have that ability. You are right, we do not track subcontracts. I understand that some may want an entity like PSPC or ISK or some central organization to track and monitor continuously, audit, the three, whatever number of contracts there are, almost 3,000, and thousands of these running each day. So I don't know. If your study recommends we do more tracking, monitoring, auditing, we will certainly consider this, but we will also advise you of the cost of that, and we'll advise the government of the cost of that, because it would require hiring several more auditing firms, many of those non-Indigenous, I would add. I would love to tell you, however, about a better alternative of what we think is an option going forward, which is Indigenous participation plans.
So I just want to go back to the comment that you made about there being a minuscule number of companies that are not complying with the subcontracting rules or with the rules to ensure that they are subcontracting to Indigenous businesses. Where are you getting that information from?
I'm getting the information from the number of audits that we've been requested to do by departments. That's essentially, and those numbers have been very low. I believe Indigenous businesses, for the most part, are honest business people. I believe that my departmental counterparts and procurement officers who do their public service are generally trying to do their job.
Thank you for that. I am glad that you have mentioned that the department conducts audits of its own. Could you please table with the committee a copy of all audits and the associated reports by your department from January 2021 to present?
I think we'll have to square that circle with the previous request from a member who asked for the same, pretty much the same thing.
I believe she asked for a list. I'm asking for the audits.
You're asking for the audits. I will definitely get some advice on that as to what is releasable publicly or to the committee. So if you can allow me to do that, I'm happy to provide and be as transparent as possible. I do need to consider privacy implications and access to information rules.
Well, on that note, Mr. Chair, could you perhaps provide us with some advice and provide Ms. Sultan with some advice as to what is releasable to a committee?
Basically, if the committee asks for it, you have to provide everything that the committee calls for. So if the committee asks for the audit, you can ask us to hang on to it, to not release it, or you can just send it to us. The committee does have the right to ask for those items. Okay. If you want to get back to us, perhaps in writing Monday, with what you'd like to do, we'd probably be fine with that.
That would be hugely appreciated. I would say,
think in this
though,
case, the audits with perhaps personal information taken out.
that would be more comfortable for me, for sure. I would say, though, that some of the audits that we have are still underway. So they're not completed. I think it's fair to...
I think we're just looking for completed audits.
Just completed. Okay. Thank you.